What's up guys, and welcome to the fifth part in my stress testing tutorial. So in the previous tutorial we started looking into some basic testing and just hitting the ping endpoint, and we used load test for that. But as you can see also in the tutorial, it's kind of hard to figure stuff out. You don't get proper summaries, and it is a little bit hard to figure all the numbers out and stuff. And especially it's a lot of fiddling with numbers back and forth, and it gets pretty complex if you want to build some kind of scenario. And if you remember the first slide that I talked about, we can use like to identify bottlenecks and improve the code, but it'll be a lot of work. Verify that changes didn't break anything is going to be a mess because we need to test everything from terminal. And sure, you can use some scripting, but it's gonna be hard. And assure that we can take X amount of users. I don't know, maybe. Especially what we're gonna focus on from now on is like testing of full sessions. And the application I chose for this is Apache JMeter, which you can download from this site right here, or just Google it and download it and start it up. And there are other alternatives to this, obviously, but this is one that I like and I'm going to use. And I'm going to start with doing the same thing as we did previously, so you can see immediately the benefits of it. So I just started up, I didn't do anything with it. So the way JMeter works is that there is three components. There is like a test plan. Let me think. Maybe there is more. So there's the threads, and there is the samplers, and then there is a listeners. Yeah. So the test plan is something else. So I'm gonna create a new test plan. Let's call it I don't know, ping tests. And the nice thing is here you can use variables and stuff. So I'm going to add a new variable and I'm going to call it base URL like this. And in here I'm going to paste my base URL to my server. So I'm going to use the one on port 8000, and that was the crappy one from PHP Storm, the basic server, if you remember in the previous tutorial. So this is a slow server. So I'm going to go ahead and add that in there, so it should be in there. And the next thing we need to do is we need three components. We need a sampler, we need a thread. And on the thread group, we're also going to need a sampler. And as you can see, if I right click here, you can see that I get different alternatives now than I did when I clicked on the test plan. So we're going to go ahead and go to sampler, and there are a lot of stuff in here. You can use like FTP and Java and JDBC and stuff. If you're a Java person, there's a lot of stuff for you in here. And there's also like SOAP, I don't know, TCP sampler if you're working with some kind of socket service that you want to test out. So there is a lot of stuff in here, but we're going to use basic HTTP requests. So the HTTP request right here. And that is the second component that you need. So you need a thread group, a sampler, and a listener. So you're going to right click here on HTTP request, add, and go to listeners. And as you can see, we also get different stuff here. You can use also like assertion if you like. So listeners, and I'm gonna start with a summary report. But the way it works, it's going to execute all the thread groups, and on each thread group, it's going to execute every sampler. Every sampler is going to run on the thread group. And when the response comes back, it's going to go through all the listeners, and that's what they call listeners because it's post processed. Whenever the response gets back, that's when they are getting processed. So I hope that wasn't too diffuse for you. I also like the results in table. I think that's a nice one. And there is also a last one that I think is kind of nice, which is the results in tree. So we have these 3 different reports that we're going to use on our HTTP requests. And you can, I suggest you also test the other listeners out. So you can test like the aggregate graph, I think. And I don't know, I haven't even tested all these myself. I usually just use those 3. Maybe there is some other nice in here. Let me know in the comments if you find something that you like. And they're like pre-processors and post-processors and timers and configuration stuff, you know. We're gonna look into config elements later also. But all right, so now we have everything set up. We're gonna go through and give them proper names and stuff. So the ping test is gonna use a thread group, which is called, I'm gonna call it users. And we're gonna start with 1 user right here. The ramp up period is if you wanna increase exponentially, or if you wanna ramp up the number of requests. You're gonna start out real easy and then increase more and more and more and more. I'm gonna not use that, so I'm just set it to 1. And I'm also gonna use 1 user. This is corresponding to the C flag that we use in load test, I think. It's kind of the same thing. And now I'm gonna specify the HTTP request. So I'm gonna call this HTTP ping. So I know what it does. And in here you specify the URL that you're gonna use. And now I want to use my variable that I specified in my test plan, the base URL. And in order to do that, you use the $sign and the curly braces and the variable name within them. So base underscore URL, I call mine. And then just append whatever stuff you want like after it. So mine was ping, if you remember. And this should be it. You can specify if it's a get or a post. We're also going to go through how that works later. And I think this is the basic setup that you need. So the next thing you do is you can click one of these if you want to check them out. I usually have mine in the summary, and then it should work. Yeah, you need to save it also before you're gonna continue. So I'm gonna save mine in some temp folder, I think, for now. And here, I think. Oops. I'm gonna call it first. Right, so now it's running, and you can also see that we got some responses right here. We got a summary. We're gonna go through this later. Actually, I think I'm gonna start with this because this is kind of nice. You know, in the HTTP request, no, it was in the thread group. We specified that we were only gonna have 1 request. And this is why we only get 1 request in here. So if I click at this one here, you can see the actual HTTP request that was done, and the headers that was set, and the body size and stuff. And if you click here, you can also see. Well, actually, this is the HTTP request, and this is this, I don't know, sampler request something. And you can see the response data that you get from the API. So this is kind of nice. And one really confusing thing is that if you run this again, it's going to just append it right here. So I usually clear them every time I run it. And you can do that from the run menu and then clear all. So everything is cleared out. And also this has some kind of strange default values here. I don't know what this is about. But if I run it again, you can see it updates. So we have 92 milliseconds on the average, which I usually look at. And you can also have a look at the max value or something. So let's crank it up a little bit. Let's give it 100 requests and go ahead and save that and clear all. So it's nice and clean. And if I click here and start it. So you can see now the HTTP responses starts coming in. You can see the scroll here. And also you get the same kind of results in here, which you can see the sample time and if it was okay and how many bytes it was and so on, all the HTTP requests, and especially the latency here is interesting. You can see it increases over time. And also this is pretty good. So you can see the average time was about 5 seconds. So the max time was about 10. There was no errors, and the throughput per second. So that's kind of nice. So you can just ramp it up until it breaks down, and yeah, you can play around a little bit with this. And the nice thing with this approach is that on the thread group you can add another sampler. So I'm going to go ahead and add another HTTP request here, and I'm going to call this HTTP version, because if you remember, I had also one that I could check the version from, you know. So actually, let me show you so it's not confusing. There is another endpoint also called version that gives me the version that I'm using. So the same procedure, base URL, and then it was /version, like this. And I need to do the same thing here. I need to add a listener. I'm just going to go with the summary reports on this. So as you can see, you can have different reports on them, and you can also rename the report if you like. And if I clear this out, I click this, and all right. If you end up like this, you can see that it looks like it's hanged, like it's stopped. It's because it's still working. So you know, it takes a while. It can take a while, especially if you try to push it real hard. So you can see now you can start getting errors here. And the nice thing, yeah, I can see here some of it is red in here. The nice thing with this is that these HTTP requests, they are going to be run in the order that they're specified. So if you take this and move it up here, it's going to be run, the HTTP version is going to be run before the HTTP ping. And this is really important to understand that this is how it works. And the same one goes for the thread groups. So if you want to have multiple thread groups, let's say that you want to have one user group that, I don't know, does something, and then afterwards another user group does another thing. The order is also important. And we're going to look in the next tutorial how we're going to use the order of them in order to achieve some other goals. So now it looks like everything is like timing out here and going crazy, so I usually just stop them at this point because all right, it actually gives me a warning about stopping them. So yeah, that was basically it, and I hope you guys liked it, and don't forget to subscribe, and if you have any questions, just put them in the comment section and I'll try to answer them. So see you in the next tutorial.